Hi folks, I just finished with DeShawn Brown. We got into this thing about co-working managers. They're doing 20 jobs at once, tour guide, cleaner, sales, events, everything. One person DeShawn knows was so busy you couldn't even book time with her. And that's not because she was popular, it's because she had no spare time. That is mental, isn't it? What else did we talk about? We talked about generous leadership, how the best people don't need managing. They're just excited to be here. And I know you're excited to be here, so that could be you. And what else? DeShawn wants co-working to be a university major, like a proper degree level, not just entrepreneurship with the side of workspace, actual co-working studies. I wish that was around when I was at college about 300 years ago. We also got into the perception problem. I talk about a freelancer group in the UK where we used to put in what is co-working, and everyone would say it's just tech bros playing ping pong. But there's so much more to co-working, as all of you listening to this know. There's salon spaces, lab spaces, maker spaces, community co-working spaces. There's so much going on there. And we talk about how, as an industry, like articulating and telling our stories much better so that office space perception of co-working is balanced out. There's the last thing we want you to do is there's the LinkedIn petition even, and FLOC want to get co-working put in the drop down menu of industries on LinkedIn, and there's a link in the show notes. We're nearly halfway to 1,000 signatures, which is what we're gunning for. This week's episode is in the LinkedIn co-working group. There's a link in the show notes to that. Come and tell us if you think co-working degrees are bonkers or brilliant ideas. Let's get into the show. Hello folks, and welcome to today's Co-working Values podcast, and in the studio all the way from where are you? I forgot to check where you are.
Raleigh, North Carolina in the
That's
US.
It, North Carolina. So it's DeShawn Brown. What are you known for, and what would you like to be known for?
Oh wow, that's a good question. Well, I'm mostly known for being the CEO and founder of CoWorks. CoWorks is a co-working management and operations platform. We sort of help focus on optimizing all the things that you need to do to power a co-working or flex space, booking, billing, that kind of thing, managing community. But I'd say the thing that really sets us apart is that community side. So helping to foster that community, grow that community, really sort of create some organization in the chaos. And then more recently, as the director of operations and strategy at the Future Leaders of Coworking, aka FLOC, which the amazing Sam Shea started this year, and we're making some really good progress there. So what do I want to be known for? That's a good question. For me, really just an innovator, somebody who really helped make a difference in whatever verticals and industries that I'm present in. That's if I can get that, that's a big win.
What is one of the things when I was stalking you online, I heard a reoccurring phrase which I really like, which is generous leadership. And what can you explain to the viewers at home what you mean by generous leadership?
Yeah, I think that for me, I found just being a founder, being in startup, it's it's a lot of work a lot of times, and it can be sometimes a grueling or sort of lonely task. And what I found is, as a leader, the best thing that you can do is really motivate people, develop people, because the best teammates, the best people in your community are the ones that you don't have to micromanage and you don't have to force, but the ones that you just get them excited to be where they are and doing what they do. And I think for me, that kind of comes through by focusing on that and focusing on how can you develop people, how can you help people. I also think on the business side too, like a lot of the best deals and sort of wins that we've had have just been through my network of, hey, this person genuinely likes me and vice versa. And so when there's an opportunity, like they're just going to say, oh, you should talk to DeShawn, right? And So yeah, I just think that's worked really well for sort of all of my organizations, and so that's kind of how I view that generous leadership.
And just before we started, we were talking about the whole teaching the next generation to be get into co-working and stuff, and that which is part of the whole future leaders of co-working conversation. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
struggling to do it, but like there's an obvious thing of like, if we could get a load of people who are young in the industry gunning with that generous leadership thing, there's a connection. That was a really bad question, sorry, but like, can you gel those two together for me?
Yeah, yeah, and this you're hitting on an interesting thread here. I always sort of look at, you gotta sort of tackle innovation on both sides, right? Like you gotta go to the people who are already established and who have the power to make big moves and all of that, but you also have to develop that next wave. And I think that's one of the things that really excites me about FLOC in particular with Future Leaders of Coworking is that's exactly kind of what we're trying to do, right? It's a peer-based community designed for early to mid-career professionals in co-working, but we also have all of the amazing existing co-working leaders as either mentors or part of that network. And we kind of saw a big gap of everybody's in their own little silos and everybody's working on their own spaces, and we come to some of these group events, which is amazing, but how do we also share these tricks of the trade, and more than that, just like build community with each other so that we can feel our industry is pretty small, comparatively, but it's pretty big when you actually get in there and start sort of meeting people. So that's kind of what we want to do there. And I think, the other thing we're trying to solve there is burnout, right? Like people get burned out in the industry. If you're a manager, you're wearing 20 different hats, and we'll dive deeper on that later. That's kind of the whole impetus of CoWorks as well. But, you're wearing all these hats, you're doing all these things, and then eventually you reach a ceiling, and then you say, well, it's just me. And, at this point, I feel like I have to just own the co-working space or leave the co-working industry. And we don't want to see that happen, right? We want to see there's so many different avenues and ways that you can build your career and stay within the industry. But, taking that even one step lower down to the university level, I think teaching people about entrepreneurship, teaching people about co-working is really the other place. If you start there, those people will come out and come into the market with fresh ideas and that young energy. And one of my sort of moonshots is to sort of help create a co-working major at the university level. So I remember being in school, and at my school, they didn't even have an entrepreneurship major at the time, but I was really invested in and involved with entrepreneurship. Now there's a whole degree for entrepreneurship, and we're seeing universities doubling down on that. They're creating entrepreneur space, which looks eerily similar to co-working. We're seeing on the CoWorks front, we're working with a lot of really cool universities in that capacity. So I'd love to see co-working kind of be just something you can study and major in, and as part of that entrepreneurship economy and ecosystem and hospitality. So I kind of took us on a little bit of a rant there, but I really do get excited about how can we, again, develop the future leaders and also connect the current leaders. I think that's the sweet spot.
I did hospitality in one of my goes at college, and I would have loved to have done. I wish unreasonable hospitality and co-working had been around when I went to college. That would have been
right.
Like that's one of the reasons I'm so enthusiastic about like the industry and FLOC. Is like, oh my god, I wish that had been there. And you said like entrepreneurship and hospitality and co-working all in the same ecosystem there. And when I went to catering college, it was because it was catering then, not hospitality.
Got it.
Catering college. It was. This is how you cook, and there was the accounts bit, which was an entrepreneurship was in another stratosphere. There was no like how to run a restaurant, how to start a restaurant wasn't even a conversation. something I've got to jump back on here is you said the impetus of CoWorks. What did you mean by that? Because that was, you left that hanging there.
Yeah. So, and it's all sort of interconnected into sort of, my kind of current focus, right? I think when I take a step back and look at the co-working industry and the flex world, there's just so much opportunity. There's so much potential. I'm fully convinced and truly believe that it's the future of work, period, across the board. I think it's how the next generation is going to want to work. I think that's just how their definition of an office is going to assume sort of a lot of the co-working traits as maybe the previous generation's definition and view of an office looked like something else. There were different things, obviously more cubicles and water coolers. I think the modern office is going to just naturally look a bit more co-working, flex, technology focused, community focused. So, but right now the state of the world really just comes down to a lack of, I think, resources, but also materials, learning. It's all there, right? It's just uh, not as solidified or codified as maybe some of the more mature industries. And so when I look at, a co-working space manager, this is really kind of where CoWorks came from, is just today, the modern community manager, co-working manager, whatever you want to call them, is truly just the typical scenario is you got somebody who's never heard of co-working. At best, maybe they worked in some sort of hospitality or hotel, but a lot of times not really. It's either they're just an entrepreneur who wants to bring people together. They're like the community builder archetype or the real estate investor archetype, but yeah, just somebody who's just known for activating people or maybe sometimes space. And then they're thrown in, and they have to be the tour coordinator, the dishwasher, the bathroom stalker, the sales admin for selling suites, the event coordinator, the booking admin, and the billing admin, right? And so all at once, all in a 9 to 5, and with limited staff and resources. And that's kind of like the modern sort of co-working manager archetype. So for me, I saw that firsthand being a member of a co-working space here in Raleigh. I was part of one of the first co-working spaces that really launched here in our region. And the owner, Jason Wyden, is a really good friend of mine, and he's helped, collaborate, and help, build CoWorks as well, as far as just being that initial customer type. But they had one manager, and she was so busy that you couldn't even get time on her calendar to deal with important issues. She was just that busy, and it wasn't all just because she's super popular. She just didn't have any spare time because of how many roles she had to sort of fit. So that was sort of the initial impetus of CoWorks, was just helping those people. Like I always like to say, we basically try to supercharge your community managers or turn them into superhumans, give them superpowers through CoWorks, as opposed to, just being thought of as just this back office, whatever. Like, we're really giving you the tools to automate, to optimize, to really let your managers be their best selves, right? And do what they do best, and not spending time on the menial, booking a room or looking at trying to spend 2 days building out a report. So yeah, it all comes back to, how do we give these resources to really let this industry thrive? And if you take it all the way back, right, I think what we were talking about with universities too, like, there's not a lot of education on how to even make this thing work. Over here, we've got the Jamie Russos of the world. She's incredible. And I think she's probably one of the best resources you could go to right now to learn how to manage a space, how to operate a space, how to make it profitable. So, a lot of times even at CoWorks at the software side, like we're actually helping spaces understand their business models and say, like through the technology, they're like, okay, well, wait a minute. Does this even make sense? Should I be doing day passes? Should I be renting my rooms? How can I streamline this? And that's sort of how we've developed the product too, is like, let's give you the tools, yes, but let's take a deeper and invested interest in what are you trying to do and why, and how do we make this better?
For those that can you just like say what Jamie does? Because it's one of the most consistent things on the internet about learning how to run a co-working space for the people at the back that don't know.
Yeah, and Jamie, forgive me because I don't want to butcher it, but the better question is what doesn't she do, right? But she does a lot of things. If you don't listen to her Everything Co-working podcast, definitely tune into that. But she's got her community manager school that she does, and I believe she even calls it the Community Manager University. But it's basically this um, you know. Uh, program that you go through with her, and she'll really walk through from start to finish, like from your business plan to making sure, like, is your space going to be profitable, understanding your revenue streams, understanding your marketing channels, and then if you already have a space, understanding what services are you providing. Like, she really walks people through the full kind of start to finish, like this is how to run a co-working business. So that program that she has is a very sort of intimate and dedicated program to help people run their business. So it's pretty powerful. So I want to see more stuff like that. I'd love to see, again, some a major in co-working or something like that. And again, just to bring it back to FLOC too, like that's another reason why we started that as well, is like, how do we just, even if you do get to, if you're lucky enough to have gone through Jamie's program and actually have a space that's working, I think it's so important to have that community, right? Like of other managers, of other spaces, of other regions. That's one of the things that fascinates me as well. Like region to region, co-working is so different, but also, we all have the same goals and missions, but we call things slightly different things. And the services that are popular slightly different. The sort of vibe of the co-working spaces are slightly different. It's really interesting to see, like here in the US, even like we're in the Southeast, I guess you could say, and like you have a lot of big warehouses and things like that. But then if you go to maybe the West Coast, you'll see smaller spaces, but the vibes are a lot more relaxed, and people go to the beach in the afternoons. And New York, it's kind of, you're always in there and you work, work, work. So it's just really interesting to see those different things. So, again, with FLOC, like I think just connecting the people so that we can learn from each other too. I think that's the other missing thread.
That you don't get that in the UK. Like there's that warehouse type co-working space is, I have seen a couple, but I only really see that in the States. You made me think of, there's a big, it's come to an end now, but there used to be a big freelancer group. There's like 15,000 UK based freelancers in this group called Freelance Heroes. And once a year for about 5 years running, Ed, who ran the group and who used to run a co-working space, would just casually drop in and say, what do you think a co-working space is? And there was a, very diverse group of people in there. And there must have been, a few hundred people that were active every week. And there'd be this tirade of, basically it boiled down to, co-working spaces is where white dudes go with their tech startups and, drink craft beer and play, whatever they do, ping pong. Yeah. And then we'd all dive in, oh no, you got it all wrong. But like there's this, what do you think about, there's this perception of what a co-working space is, and then what people like us think it is, the potential of it in the local community and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'm and I think it's an important conversation too. Like when you think about, first of all, just diversity in the industry, but the perception as well, and access to some of these things, and even just like you could make the comparison to the tech world writ large and sort of access to technology. So, and I think the short answer is that it's, first of all, it's evolved a lot, but I think the true ethos of co-working is sort of rooted in this idea of collaborating, building a community, sort of the more inclusivity piece of it. And that's part of the reason why I want to sort of make the industry bigger, a bit more well known. I think a lot of people, when I talk to them about what I do in the industry, they don't, if they know what co-working is, then the only thing they do know is WeWork. And
Yeah.
so, and that's a blessing and a curse. At least they now have at least if you say co-working now, they have a reference point. But is that the reference point we want?
That's like
Yes and
saying
no.
Hilton or TGI Fridays, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's kind of like, I don't know, and all that conversation. But that is
Right.
in COVID. There was I've been doing co-working for at least 300 years, and
Yeah. Right.
and for the first time, like the first time I was in a co-working space was in 2010. So when
Yeah.
COVID happened 10 years later, that was the first time people in my family went, oh, like WeWork, that co-working,
Mm-hmm.
because they all had to find somewhere to go near their house.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
still their first port of call was exactly what you said, like WeWork. And
Right.
part of me was delighted they finally knew what I was on about. And
Exactly.
part of me was like, oh dear, there's so much more to it, but
It's
you'll
so much
never
more to it.
understand it.
And I think that, to me, like, the beauty of it is that you have, like, I'll just put my just startup and founder hat on. Like, co-working enables you to have the amenities and resources that you otherwise couldn't have. And so what I mean by that is, I did briefly work in sort of a traditional corporate and investment banking. And, they just have these giant offices with cafeterias and, all these different amenities. Then I did my own startup, and I could barely afford just the rent on an office. And when I finally got one, there was no kitchen, there was no Wi-Fi, there was no furniture. I had to either buy or build all of those things. I had a shell, I had walls. And they said, here's walls with a door and keys, and that'll be $1 billion. Right. And so, and that's just kind of, it is what it is. When you're starting a business, you would raise capital, and a lot of it would go towards just your office expenses. But co-working, just from just literally a practical level, does allow you to step in and just have access to that as a small business. You get these professional meeting rooms, amenities, and cleaning, and then you also get just the feel, the energy. I remember, that office experience I was just mentioning, like, when I was building my first startup, my team, even when we did finally put furniture in there and stuff, everyone would just leave and go to the coffee shops. And I'm like, why am I spending all this money on this downtown rent if you guys are just going to leave and go to the coffee shops? And they're like, well, I don't know. It's just kind of, we want a change of scenery, and we want to be around people. So then you can kind of step in and get that. So, but I think what I've been really interested to see is, like, co-working spaces for salons, for wellness professionals, for scientists, like, life science companies who have shared lab space, makers. So, when we talk about, back to your point about what does co-working really look like, is, just kind of a bunch of white dudes playing ping pong. Like, there's definitely a lot of that, but it's really allowed these communities to come together, share resources, be more efficient, more effective, have access to community that otherwise they don't get until they scale, which I think is something that allows you to focus on doing what you do as your startup, and not have to, worry about managing your Wi-Fi, which I can tell you is not fun.
Oh, yeah. Don't get me started on that. That's something. I mean, we're much better at talking about it nowadays, but the I Interesting to see if you agree with this, but I think there's this kind of business narrative, which is like Shark Tank and The Apprentice, and there's a lot of people that I know directly who have started businesses, and they're like what Janine calls like kitchen table entrepreneurs, and they like that they're making their thing. They definitely want to make money. They're not like that type of Shark Tanky investor things. They want to make a living, and they wouldn't identify with like business talk, but they do identify with, like, as you were saying, the maker spaces and the hair salon people. As I've seen those popped up, I've been like, oh my God, imagine starting out as is it a salonist or a barber, and then being able to hang around other people and popping in there, doing your accounts, and then going out and doing some hair and coming back again. What a great existence. Because I've been in when I worked in events, I was an event manager, and you sort of meet people at events. Then you go to a coffee shop, then you go to work, and then you go home. And there was no congregating thing. The only congregating we did was like drinking from 12 to 5 o'clock after an event in the morning. But if we'd had somewhere to go and sit down and congregate, it would have been, magic.
100%. And I just think that especially, in a sort of post-pandemic world, I just think the value prop of the office space has sort of changed, right? Like there was a time where, from a technology standpoint, like it was sort of the traditional office was the only way. Like I worked in an organization where they had an on-premise server and database, which I won't get into the weeds, but it just basically meant you literally had a big tower computer and you had to be physically on site to log into it. There was no, open your laptop and remote in. But, most of those kind of constraints are gone. And now the cultural narrative is kind of shifted towards, okay, looks like you can work from home. So when you do that, then you have to think like, well, what would make you want to go somewhere? Like what reason would you have to go out of your house or, just choose to willingly pay for a different experience? So I think it's sort of forced people to really think that through. Like, what is my value prop? Why would someone want to come here to work when they don't have to because of some technological constraint or because of some business constraint? And I think that's where we get into the community, the flexibility, and all the other sort of magic of co-working. But it's also great for people who don't care about that stuff too. Like some people just need a place to be productive and have heads down work. And it's a great option because they can do it on their own terms, whether that be a desk, an office, a floating membership. There's just so many optionality there. So I think for me, I always that's what excites me about co-working, is that it can be for everybody. Like truly, there's no use case where somebody like it wouldn't have at least one membership option that makes sense for them, even if it's just a mailbox, for example. That's actually a huge business too. There's as an entrepreneur, something I didn't think about. You can't put your home address as your business address. You should not. So even just that by itself is a value prop. So there's just so many use cases, and that's why just kind of continuing to elevate the industry, I think, is important.
That mailbox thing, I'm still amazed at how many co-working space owners don't know about the mailbox thing.
Oh yeah. If you do it right, you can. It's just easy recurring money. There's some operations, some overhead, some maintenance, but I mean, if you do it right, it's just extra money.
We're on a little education drive in the London Co-working Assembly about that at the moment, because who doesn't? I mean, I'm sure there's lots of people listening to this who don't want an address in London, but right. For the purposes of my line, who doesn't want an address in London? DeShawn, where can you give the little pitch about the LinkedIn drop-down menu item, because that is a reoccurring theme on this podcast, and we put a link in the show notes every time. And last I checked, it was like 387.
Yep. So we definitely need some more eyes. We need some more action. But basically what we're trying to doing, so this is through FLOC. One of the things that the goals of FLOC is, connecting people, building this sort of peer network and mentorship. And we've got a lot of really awesome programming. We just launched some peer matching, and we've got some amazing workshops. So if you haven't tapped in, definitely do that. But one of the things we wanted to do was, figure out how do we, again, elevate that in the industry, the co-working industry. So we started a petition to have co-working recognized as an official industry on LinkedIn, so that all of us in this field have a legitimate option when we're talking about our background, our business, our industry. Again, kind of back to that story of when we all talk to our friends and family about what's co-working and what does it mean. So yeah, just elevate. I think it's time. It's way overdue. So we're working on this petition. We're trying to get 1,000 signatures. That's kind of the key number to really give us a chance to make this happen. So we're almost halfway there, but we definitely need a big push. So yeah, definitely go check that link. It's just a few steps, but I think everyone wins, right? Like it's just going to legitimize all of these amazing people who have been in co-working for a long time, and the folks that are also just coming in. Like it seems so simple and so trivial, but it's a huge deal, right? Like just adding that as an industry, just to get that recognition is I think really important.
I would love to move from. I think mine says manage and whatever it is, consulting.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right.
What do you do? I'm a consultant. Right. We're going to put a link to that in the show notes, and to CoWorks and to DeShawn's LinkedIn and all that stuff, and also to the LinkedIn co-working group, which has had its most active month ever, and that is thanks to people posting about the first co-working unconference at South by Southwest in 2011. So go and check that out. There's also Unreasonable Hospitality, which is our online connecting, chatting, no sponsors, no gimmicks, just co-working space owners and community managers talking about a specific question, and also talking about how much they love and enjoy their members both at the same time. So the highs and lows of running a co-working space, and you get to talk for about 40 minutes in groups of 4, and it's all private, and we don't repurpose it for content or anything like that. That's once a month. It's a London co-working assembly event that seems to have attracted like people from everywhere, which is making it better and better and better. Is there anything you'd like to say before we go, DeShawn? Any words of wisdom for the viewers at home?
Yeah, I would just say, definitely check out all the things we got going on with FLOC and with CoWorks. And I would just encourage everybody, who's in the co-working industry or who's interested in it in any capacity, to just look around and see what can you do to sort of elevate somebody else, elevate the industry, elevate yourself, right? I think we're kind of in this really awesome time where there's some uncertainty in the real estate level, but there's some excitement and sort of legitimacy to the co-working and the flex movement. So my goal and mission is to see how can I help keep pushing that forward. So yeah, that's it.
Thanks, man. And wherever you are in the world, thank you for your time and attention, and be careful out there. It is a jungle.